The Patrick Riggins Show. Call in now, 865-243-TALK. That's 243-8255. And now your host, Patrick Riggins.
Welcome to the Patrick Riggins Show. Each week I am here giving you hope for the future of America, sounding a call to action for all Americans to take back our country from this ever-growing monster of pervasive and intrusive government. The radio beacon and navigational aid, which broadcasts our signal far and wide, is the powerhouse radio station of the Southeast, WNOX FM 100.3. This is the radio station pumping out 100,000 watts, enabling us to be heard in parts of 5 southeastern states and 2 time zones. But if for some unfortunate reason you are only here on vacation or passing through and not a permanent resident, when you return to your home place, you can still tune this show in over the internet at www.wnoxfm.com. At that website, you can view the sheer magnificence and opulence that is the luxurious studios of Station Knoxville of the Patrick Riggins Show here at WNOX. All provided by the exclusive in-studio webcam located on the east side of the room. That web address again, if you missed it, is wnoxfm.com. The regular listeners of the show already know him. He is the hardworking show producer for all the Sunday shows here on the radio station. But he likes this show the best because after this, he gets to go home.
Not just for that reason.
Yeah, he sits to my left. His name is Tori.
Hello, hello.
And we were talking right before the show started. Tori's also, for those of you who don't know, Tori's a drummer for a band here locally called Quart Jar. And you guys have some stuff coming up.
Yes, finally I get to announce some gigs. Yay!
I ask you about it. You say, well, I'm not sure, but maybe all that asking each week finally got something going in someone's mind, and they said, hey, we'll call that band.
Yes.
That's what did it, sure.
Yes. Yes.
So you have some dates coming up here where the band's going to be playing?
Yeah, actually, we are playing at the Well September 15th. That's a Saturday, September 15th, with a friend of mine's band, actually. They're called Gorilla Sons, and their drummer, Jesse, I used to work with him, and good friend of mine. But we're playing at the Well. We're opening up for them the 15th, and possibly the weekend before that, the 8th, at the Pilot Light. I just heard word on that, like, while I was here a couple hours ago. I got a text for it, so not for sure on that one, but most probably will be at the Pilot Light the 8th and the Well the 15th.
And the Pilot Light, the location of that being the Old City.
The Old City, the old punk
Jackson
bar
Avenue.
down there. If anybody remembers the Pilot Light, it's the old, let's see, how should I put this and be... Alternative, yeah. Not the fanciest of the places in the Old City.
Rustic.
Rustic, very rustic. Very punk and very rustic, but a cool place nonetheless.
And then the Well is up in Bearden there, right before, just east of Mayo's in that shopping center.
Yeah, right next to Long's Drug Store and Lenny's, and that's a really cool place. The woman who opened it is... Oh, I wish I wouldn't have started talking about it because I can't remember.
But it's basically words for you now.
It's by musicians for musicians. The place is, and it's really clean and a really cool place to go. It's not a dive whatsoever.
And again, that's September 15th. A little ways off, but you can go ahead and get that on your calendar at the Well. And then the Pilot Light, maybe the week before, but we'll be sure and let you know here on the show.
Oh yeah, right? Well, we'll keep you
updated.
I'm sitting here trying to multitask. That's why I can't talk. I'm doing other things at the same time. Honestly, I swear I can talk.
I thought I smelled something burning. Anyway, thank you to everyone for tuning in again this week to the show. I like to do that every week because I want this listening audience to know just how very much we appreciate you here at the Patrick Riggins Show. As election gets closer and closer, I find it a little interesting how the media and the campaigns start dividing the country into different demographics and speculate which candidate is most likely to win which area or group. Usually during this conversation, the topic of what each candidate is promising to each group comes up, what bill they can pass to curry their votes. Every time I hear this, I just want to scream. Yes. When did we get to the point where we're trying to screw over other Americans in order to get what I want? And that is what you're doing when you sell your vote for some goodie from Washington. Where do you think the money comes from to provide this little dividend? It comes from your fellow taxpayer. Government doesn't make or sell anything. All government does is take money from one person and give it to another. If they are doing something with it, like building roads or defending the country, that's fine. That is a function of government. But when government takes money from one American and hands it to another, then that is blatantly wrong. I've stated it on this show many times before, and it is almost becoming a weekly thing. If you're taking money from the government in some form of aid, and it is over and above what you paid in, if you even paid anything in, then you're stealing from your neighbor. At least have the guts and the courtesy to walk next door and demand they pay for whatever it is you don't want to pay for. In this country, at least most of the time, you are allowed to face your accuser. But now, we have a bunch of anonymous people riding on the backs of others who are working and trying to make something of their lives. And if we complain or ask them to meet some sort of qualification criteria, we get called cold-hearted. And if that doesn't work, they'll play the ever-present race card. We are told to be quiet, work, pay your taxes while these others can lounge about and get their government checks.
Be a good American.
Yeah, be a good American. Pay your taxes and be quiet. What is right about this? When do we start thinking that living off the fruits of others' labor is okay? What these people don't realize, and to be truthful, they probably don't even care, is government aid is an insidious and destructive thing. It makes people lazy. It destroys their drive and motivation. Because if everything is being provided for you, why bother trying to do it for yourself? So just think about that as you go through the week. If you're taking something like that, start thinking about where it's coming from. It's coming from your neighbors, and should you be taking money from your neighbors like that? As I said, just at least go next door and tell them thank you at the very least. We're up on the first break here. This week we have some stories on the presidential candidates, although not from an angle you'll hear on any other show, but you've come to expect that from a top-notch and original radio show like this one, along with some other stuff, and we'll try to work in some of your calls. Just join us after the break here with the Patrick Riggins Show as Tori dances around the studio. We'll be back here.
Fighting for freedom, liberty, and the restoration of the Constitution. The Patrick Riggins Show. Call in now at 865-243-8255. That's 243-TALK. And now your host, Patrick Riggins.
Welcome back. You're listening to the Patrick Riggins Show. We're playing an old school tune by a band called Living Colour, singing about the cult of personality. Just listen to these lyrics coming up. Excellent, excellent lyrics. I exploit you, still you love me. I will tell you 1 and 1 makes 3. If you want to check that song out, just Google cult of personality lyrics. The reason I wanted to lead in with this song was because this segment is going to be about just that, a cult of personality. If you don't know what that is, a cult of personality is akin to hero worship of an individual. The difference is a cult of personality is established through the use of mass media and distributed propaganda. Usually this propaganda is proliferated through the use of imagery, creating this stylized and most of the time fictional, bigger-than-life persona, which is used to control others. Now, through the years, we have seen this in totalitarian regimes. During a drive through one of these countries, you would see displays of the leader and how magnificent yet caring this person was, all in an effort to sell the population on the thought that even though this person was almost godlike, he still cared for them as his children. This leads to a cult-like devotion to the leader and the surrendering of all basic and natural rights to the state and ultimately this leader, this great person who cares and protects them from whatever the leader deems as a danger to their society. In return, they are so mesmerized by this almost divine being, they will make whatever sacrifices this leader deems necessary, even death. This is what we have been seeing start to occur in our presidential elections in this country. An almost deification of our candidate or candidates, an indoctrination of a large part of the population. We are told by multiple media and supposed news outlets how this person is the answer to our problems, how before they came along we had no hope, no chance of making it on our own. This propaganda is continued throughout the 24/7 news cycle by multiple, quote, trusted people, and if this many people are all saying pretty much the same thing, then it must be true, right? If this false savior wins office and doesn't deliver on their promises, a large portion of the population is now disillusioned. They say they have been lied to, but yet they still buy the storyline from the next so-called divinity to come along and tell them what they want to hear. So what happens when the American citizens start putting too much power and glory in one person? Or not even just one person, but one entity, such as the federal government. Here's the answer from Daniel Hannan. He is a member of the European Parliament, and back near the first of the year, he gave a speech and made a few interesting comments I'd like to play for you, starting with this one.
If you repeat our mistakes, if you shift power from the 50 states to Washington, from the elected representative to the federal czar, from the citizen to the state, we know exactly what lies in store for you. I've been a member of the European Parliament for 12 years. I am living in your future, or at least the future towards which your present leaders seem intent on taking you. And believe me, my friends, you are not going to enjoy it.
What Mr. Hannan is trying to warn us about is losing America, losing what makes us unique, and that is our freedoms and liberties. In this next clip, he paints a picture of an America under the types of reforms these big government types want to make.
You look at the reforms being undertaken by this administration. They're not a series of random initiatives that have just been lashed together accidentally. They amount to a comprehensive policy of Europeanization. European healthcare, European daycare, European college education, European nuclear disarmament, European carbon taxes, the whole package. And I tell you, when you adopt those things, you don't just become like any other country. You become less prosperous, less independent, less democratic, and less free.
So, what is the solution? It is what I've stated on this show over and over. Congress.
It turns out that most of the reasons why you're in a mess are really not to do with the White House. It's the Congress that sets the budgets. It's the Congress that has presided over the debt.
Congress. Congress is the problem. They are the ones passing the budget. They are the ones raising the debt limit. Here, Mr. Hannan gives some advice on how to select a congressional representative.
And what kind of congressman do you want? Well, look, we've all got our perfect definition, right? We all agree that it's someone who wants to spend less, someone who wants to give powers back. I would summarize it like this. Every congressman should take his oath of office seriously. That's all you need. They stand up there and they promise to uphold and defend the Constitution of the United States of America. If they really mean that, that's enough for me.
But electing the representative who understands the Constitution and the limits placed on government is not the only critical component. You have to ensure this person realizes their place in history as well, and here he addresses that in this final clip.
The greatness of a constitution like this is reflected in the people who serve under it. And the most vital commodity in politics is the humility to understand that you are not bigger than the government that you serve.
I love that quote. If you take anything from this segment, take that. The most vital commodity in politics is the humility to understand you are not bigger than the government you serve. This is what I mean by this whole cult of personality. We tie so much up in the presidential election that Congress gets off almost scot-free. Everyone puts their hopes and their dreams in this one person, this presidential candidate, when it is Congress we should be worrying about. The president cannot do anything without Congress. Now, you may say, what about all these executive orders? Congress could stop that immediately. Just refuse to fund whatever the president is trying to do. No money, no action. That's how it works. But here we have a Congress bellyaching about the president getting away with doing this or that, when it is them who funds all of this garbage. They hold the purse strings and could vote to stop anything they want. Why does this happen? Because selling you on one person is much easier than trying to sell you on 535. For those of you who don't know, that is a total members of Congress. Our founders knew the inherent danger of concentrating all this power into one place. They had lived under a king and understood the problems of a cult of personality. They understood that distributing power out to the people would make it much harder for any one person or group to seize control and rule instead of serve the people. But businesses and other groups understand their money is best spent in one place. Having power concentrated in Washington helps them spend their money in the best and most efficient way possible. If you have to lobby all 50 states plus all the local city and county governments, their money wouldn't go nearly as far or be as influential. So, you see, we citizens are fighting against all of this, but we wield the one thing that can turn these problems around: our vote. Many people have already sold their vote to the highest bidder, but fortunately, there are enough of us who haven't that we can still make a difference. Now, supposedly intelligent people will say your vote, your one vote doesn't matter. When you engage them in debate, you start to see they're talking about the presidential election. Well, who cares? As I stated before, the president cannot do anything without Congress approving it. Make sure the representative you're voting for is one who will stick to the Constitution and only do what is allowed under it. Everything else gets voted no. But just your vote isn't enough. You need to get out and help convince your friends, your co-workers, everyone in your inner circle to vote for this representative who's going to follow through on their congressional oath to uphold and defend the Constitution, and that means obeying it. By working within your inner circle, you convince people who can now work within their inner circle, and so on. And that's where we'll start to get this problem turned around that we're having in this country. And at that point, too, you'll be able to tell your children and your grandchildren that you did not stand idly by and watch events unfold. You worked to make a difference. And who knows, you may be the person, or one of your kids may be the person who leads this country back from the brink of socialism. And into just a much better tomorrow. We're already up on the bottom of the hour break here on the Patrick Reagan Show. We'll go to some commercials. We'll come back with a couple of things from Judge Napolitano, and then we'll get to your calls. This is Patrick Reagan's with the Patrick Reagan Show.
Fighting for freedom, liberty, and the restoration of the Constitution. The Patrick Reagan Show. Call in now at 865-243-8255. That's 243-TALK. And now your host, Patrick Riggins.
Welcome back to the Patrick Reagan Show. My multitasker is not multitasking. I'm your host, Patrick Riggins. And I possess the looks that kill, whatever that means. Tori, being a musician, you should know, if you have the looks that kill, does that mean you're so good looking you kill people who see you, or so ugly that you kill people?
I would think it would be the latter.
Yeah. Well, you know, they had that the Medusa in Greek mythology there. She was so ugly she killed people. So I don't know what exactly they're saying there. I guess you could take that either way.
I obviously can't figure out which button to press right now. So
oh, that's okay.
It's been a long day.
It's Sunday afternoon, almost
only
coming up on
24 minutes left, but who's counting?
Then you'll be heading to the house. In the rain, maybe, too, apparently. So
I'm driving not on the motorcycle today, so I'm fine.
Yeah, you're fine. Yes, no problem. Just got to watch out for the other idiots.
Yes.
And there's a lot of them.
Me being one.
Yeah. All right, welcome back to the Patrick Riggin Show for the second half hour. Amazing and exciting. We'll be getting to your calls here in a second. One quick thing I want to cover real quick. I guess that one, Lisa, the real quick thing I want to cover real quickly.
Well, just do it quickly.
Yeah, just get it done. All right. Let's see. Oh, here we go. Judge Andrew Napolitano gave an interview a little while back, and for those of you who listened to the opening of the show, he is one of the people on the first of the show, one of the quotes, and also one of our favorite libertarian types. I thought, since he gave this interview, I'd like to play you a couple clips and listen to what he says about the upcoming election, because it addresses a lot of questions that a lot of libertarians are starting to have. He led off the interview by letting everyone know where he stands on the Romney versus Obama election.
What I think is demonstrable. Mitt Romney's views are closer to Barack Obama's than they are to Ron Paul's or Thomas Jefferson's. I think that's demonstrable. I don't think there's any spin in that, and I think that could easily be demonstrated. So those of us who really yearn for a return to first principles, the natural law, the Constitution, a government that only has powers that we have expressly consented that it may have, are frustrated with the choice between Barack Obama and Mitt Romney. And it's a difficult choice to make.
So, given these two choices, what does someone do? Who, like Michaela Maroney, is unimpressed with essentially the two choices we have to pick from. Here's his take on that.
Does one vote for Gary Johnson as a way of demonstrating there's a huge base of libertarians out there, and even though you're going to be president, Governor Romney, we're going to be watching you? Or does one vote for Mitt Romney because he's the lesser of two evils and is not likely to give us Supreme Court appointments of the nature that Barack Obama has? I myself have not yet resolved this.
So it is quite a conundrum. For whom do you vote? As far as Supreme Court justices are concerned, the judge would rather have Mitt Romney making the picks.
The short answer to your question is, yes, I'd rather have Mitt Romney choose a Supreme Court nominee than Barack Obama.
He also commented on the talk of some libertarians about going ahead and voting for Mr. Romney.
There's a great groundswell amongst libertarians to toss some support to Mitt Romney so that we never have to live in fear of what Barack Obama might do by executive order or decree.
When Judge Napolitano was asked about another 4 years with Obama, here was his answer to that.
Most of my colleagues believe, and I share this view, that Barack Obama is arguably president most dangerous to human freedom since Abraham Lincoln.
Not even Judge Napolitano is absolutely sure who he's going to vote for yet. Gary Johnson, the libertarian candidate, or Mitt Romney, the lesser of two evils, in order to assure a defeat for President Obama. If you have any comments on this, give us a call here at the radio station. We'll be glad to talk to you during this segment on it, and then I'll kind of cram my opinion in at the last. But I think it's an important question. I think it's a hard question for people to kind of figure out. Do you vote your principles and possibly put in a person you don't want, or do you vote to what you think would be best for the country? But would it really be best for the country, I guess, is the question. And I addressed this a little bit in the last segment, where I think the most important thing is to vote for the congressional representative whom you think is the best, because that is where the money gets allocated and funded. And if we can get that back, then we can rein in on all this executive power and this cult of personality that's going on, talking about putting all of our eggs in this one basket as far as the president's concerned, instead of trying to get out there and get good Congress representatives in. I see Tori's pulling his mic up there.
And just voting for a president, I guess the way we were putting it like that is kind of like buying a used car. You never know what you're going to get to actually after you purchase it, and you get halfway down the road and it just breaks down on you.
Sure. Well, and the thing is, if you And kind of that same analogy, if that's the only car you've got getting you to work, then you're in trouble.
Oh, yeah.
Because you've put all of your reliance and trust in that one car. If you have a fleet of cars and one breaks down and you've got 435 others or 434 others, you're kind of okay. So we can tolerate a bad elected president, but what we can't tolerate is having problems as far as getting a bad Congress in there, and that's kind of what we're looking at now, is a Congress that won't stand up to the president on some things, and that's really what needs to happen. So anyway, we'll let's see. We've got a call in here. We'll break a little bit here. We've got a call, Scott calling about the fair tax out of Powell. We'll go ahead and take his caller here real quick. How you doing, Scott?
Hey, guys. Hey, listen, I've got a twofer, and basically, but the underlying issue is indifference. I've contacted my congressman on two different issues, trying to get them interested in promoting the fair tax.
Uh-huh.
And it seemed like I could have just, gone to a telephone booth and had a conversation of one.
Yeah, go outside and talk to a tree.
Right. The second thing is I tried again to get this person interested in the issue of thorium power, which was developed in Oak Ridge, just down the street.
Uh-huh.
And I don't know if you know it, but it's tons better. And the thorium industry is not asking for handouts like the solar industry. They're merely asking for the federal government to take the boot off their neck so they can develop it their own self.
Wow.
And so I'm really frustrated that you go to people who claim and market themselves to be conservative.
Yes.
Right. And they seem to have a juggernaut on power in the area.
They do, and the problem is with that is when we have an electorate that turns out 30-something% to vote. And so all this representative is worried about is his people, because his people are a significant part of that 30-something%, voting him in or her in. And so if we had a turnout of 80-something, 90%, then they'd have a lot more to worry about, because they know a lot more people are looking at them and looking at what they're doing.
It's just, as being somebody who's libertarian-minded, the whole idea of the fair tax seems like a no-brainer. We should have done it 30 years ago, type of thing.
Sure.
And so I'm just so frustrated that you can't find anyone who is either in the U.S. Senate or the U.S. House who will actually try to have a decent conversation with you about it. It just absolutely fascinates me.
Yeah,
how different they are.
It is, and we're running up on the break here, Scott. Thank you for the call, and real quick, and the solution to this is, well, we're on the break here. I'll have the solution for this when we come back from the break. Join us with the Patrick Regan Show. We'll be right back in a couple of minutes.
Fighting for freedom, liberty, and the restoration of the Constitution. The Patrick Regan Show. Call in now at 865-243-8255. That's 243-TALK. And now your host, Patrick Riggins.
And we're back. This is Patrick Riggins with the Patrick Riggins Show. Works well like that when you have the host hosting the show named after him. We're here back for the last segment. This is usually kind of a short segment, but what I want to do is kind of carry over from that last caller we had, and he was expressing some frustration with congressional people not listening. My opinion kind of on all this and who we should vote for and everything is, I think in the presidential election, you should vote for the person who best supports your views, be that Barack Obama, Mitt Romney, Gary Johnson, or one of the other candidates with whom you most agree. When it comes to Congress, I think here is where you start to run into could be a little bit of a problem as far as your principles. I think you have to balance your vote, and this is in Congress. between the person who is most likely to win and is closest to supporting freedom and liberty and the person with whom you might agree the most. Oftentimes, these are not the same candidate. Unfortunately, sometimes you have to make a sacrifice or two to get a few steps forward in life. The solution is to get good quality candidates for Congress and get them elected. Then you don't have to make that hard choice. And it won't matter who the president is, because the Congress will be full of strong, constitutionally minded people with the backbone to vote the way they should. This is the ideal we should be working towards. Personally, I believe we can make it if we work hard enough. After all, we had plenty of naysayers when we decided to fight a war for our country to gain our independence, and yet we prevailed. It wasn't easy, but with hard determination and persistence, we made it. Getting good people elected is nothing compared to fighting a war for your independence. But the crux of the matter is you have to go vote. And I know most of the people listening in this audience more than likely go vote. And that's fantastic. But I know you know probably 5 to 10 people who don't vote. And that's where the problem is. Real quick, I have a quick note here on this last election here in Tennessee, particularly Knox County, where this radio show is based here out of Knoxville. This last election, we had, about 24,500 people vote. And that's according to the unofficial cumulative report that I have here that was dated August 2nd. They might have something a little later out, but I'd say the numbers are pretty close. Now, that's counting absentee, early, and regular Election Day voting. The latest number of registered voters I could find was about 258,000, plus a little up or back. So, if these numbers prove to be correct, it means that 10% or a little less of the registered people voted. That's where we're running into a problem with these guys and gals that go in to Congress and forget what they're there for. They're not worried about what 90% of the people in their district think, because 90% of the people in their district aren't voting. So now in presidential elections nationwide, we get about half. I think it's 50 to 51% of registered voters vote. Again, not that the presidential election is a huge deal. Personally, I don't see it as one because, as I state, the Congress is the one holding the purse strings. They're the ones that, if you get Congress turned around, then it kind of, well, lack for a better word, neuters the president. Yes. So, but that would limit a lot of what he can do. If he or she, I'm not trying to be sexist, and it's using he in the pejorative term as far as the president's concerned, but if he wants to do something and issue an executive order, then all Congress has to do is say, we're not going to fund that. We're trying that tact with Obamacare, and we see the problems we're running into there in Congress. Now, the Republican presidential candidate is saying he's going to repeal Obamacare, but they want to turn right back around and replace it with something else. So is that really better? Well, no, of course not. This is something the government doesn't need to be in. As do you know, if you listen to this show, this is just something we feel very strongly about. Government doesn't need to be in 3/4 of the things it's doing. I think that's where we run into this problem, and we've taken a couple of callers on it before in the past about libertarians who are trying to have this lack of or have this problem with their principles. Do I vote for my principles, or do I vote for the person who I think is going to stop the destructive path we're on? Of course, my analysis a lot of times is, well, you can vote for the person who's going to destroy the country in a year, or you can vote for the person who's going to destroy it in 5 years. Either way, I don't think you can put a whole lot of credence in the presidential election. Just, vote however you want to go. But the Congress is the key. Congress is who we need to concentrate on. Along those same lines, we also I have this quick story right here. There is a protest rally here in downtown Knoxville about a week or so ago. I don't know if you could call 50 people a protest rally, but that's who showed up. But they're protesting this new law in Tennessee requiring a government-issued photo ID in order to vote in the election. The participants are claiming the new law is nothing more than a way to target minorities, the poor, and the elderly who may have no means of attaining a photo ID. This, I think, is just totally ignorant, because they've said now you can go get this photo ID if that's the problem. And as far as I know, all the K-Trans buses run out downtown. So a lot of times these people, though, are, of course, manipulating these groups in order to try and get this law stopped. And they say there's not much that in voter fraud. But even if a little bit of voter fraud, we don't want any of that. They say you're more likely to be struck by lightning than to encounter voter fraud. My argument with that is I'm also more likely to be struck by lightning than to be mauled by a bear. But that doesn't mean I'm not careful in the woods. I'm also 30 times more likely to be struck by lightning than to be attacked by a shark. But that doesn't mean I don't keep an eye out when I'm in the water at the beach.
Or going down the highway.
Yeah. Land shark, to quote the OSNL. Land shark. So I guess what I'm trying to get at is try and put a lot of thought into your congressional elections. The presidential elections, I don't think it really matters that much if we have Congress, and a Congress that follows what it should be doing constitutionally, and that's the most important thing. And if you don't have a candidate that's listening to you or responding to you, then either you run or get somebody who will run and get grassroots support underneath them and get them elected. The Tea Party has proven you can do this. This is a doable thing. You just have to get out and do it. It's not going to be done itself. It's not going to be done if you go to work and come home and sit there and watch TV and then complain to everybody about it. What you have to do is get out and make it happen. Anyway, we're up on the end of the show here. Thank you again for listening to the show this week. If you'd like more information about it, you can go to our Facebook page at facebook.com and then the / Patrick Riggins Show. That's RIGGINS Show. Be sure and hit that like button. You can also follow us on Twitter at the little @ Patrick Riggins. And if you miss anything, want to hear something again, or listen to the whole show, you can go to youtube.com / Patrick Riggins Show. You can also get us at patrickriggins@gmail.com if you want to email us, or you can send us something through U.S. mail via the station here at WNOX on Kingston Pike in Knoxville. Join me next Sunday afternoon, where once again we'll talk more about freedom, liberty, and the restoration of the Constitution. This is Patrick Riggins, and we will see you next Sunday afternoon. Have a great week.
Join us again next week for a solid dose of truth on The Patrick Riggins Show, every Sunday from 4 to 5 p.m. Be there.